Hi, everyone. For our latest truism, I'm continuing on with things that I've been thinking about during what we have jokingly termed the apocalypse, attempting to still find some gallows humor in all of this. But that would be my long tail recovery from retinal surgery after suffering detachments in both eyes, which is covered more in depth in my last video. And luckily, since then, I have at least been cleared to sit up straight, which I am very, very grateful for. This one is about how a conversation with one of my doctors made me stop and think about the nature of risk, and that likelihood is a relative and fluid concept. Once I learned what was going on with my eyes, I asked the question, how rare is it for someone to have a redetachment after surgery? And the answer was, well, that's about 1 in 10. And my immediate knee jerk reaction to that, based on how we view 10% likelihood in business scenarios, was that this was some serious hard luck on my part. But the doctor said, look, we do more than 10 retina operations each and every day, but let's just call it 10. That means that on average, we know that at least one person every day is going to come back for a redetachment. So that is in no way rare. In healthcare, rare is more like 1 in 10,000 or 1 in 100,000 or 1 in a million, which really got me thinking, right? And then, of course, I asked, well, how rare is it for it to happen in both eyes? Which again was about 1 in 10. But then I said, but at the same time, and that's where he didn't have stats at the ready and acknowledged that that might be where the universe was messing with me a little bit. But it certainly did get me thinking about how, if I'm being honest, I generally regard anything with a 10% likelihood, a stat that we do assign to opportunities in our pipeline, as not only unlikely, but improbable, right? Of course, we have discussions about what we might do to raise those percentages, but after a period of time, anything that remains in that strata is generally deprioritized over those with higher likelihood. I'm not saying that I disagree with that, but there's still a numbers game to be played, right? If I have 10 opportunities in that category, does it still stand to reason, like with the doctor, that if we give them all the old college try, that one of them will rise? Historically speaking, in my world, I don't think that's true. But maybe then the percentage is off. It's hard to say because there's a big human component to what I'm tracking, right? Relationships, personalities, and even moods of both the market and individuals comes into play. So it's not just pure data, there are very subjective variables. But any marketer will tell you that there's a numbers game to be played, right? That no matter how unlikely success might feel, and even with an infinitesimal expected success rate, if you get your messaging and your targeting right, you can still turn those odds into success by simply increasing the volume and staying committed. What I know is that until now, I hadn't really thought much about the contextual nature of risk and playing the odds. I certainly know from experience that it's always best to spend limited resources on things with higher probability, right? But I also know that this can contribute to feedback loops and to ruts, and it can work against things like expanding your service offerings and the diversity of your portfolio. So that's where your strategic objectives provide another factor into how you view and play these odds. Maybe by continuing to keep in mind that rarity varies depending on the context, we can better align our expectations with reality and maybe empower us to strike a more ambitious stance between cautious decision making and seizing opportunities. Likelihood is a relative and fluid concept.